Chapter 2. The Other Side of Dauntless Expanded Version. As Triss left the quiet, orderly world of abnegation, her heart was filled with both excitement and fear. The further she went from the city, the more the scenery changed. The old train station, rusted rails, and enormous abandoned industrial buildings stretched beneath the gray, oppressive sky. Here lay the arena, where dauntless youth were tested by courage and strength, a place where one faced their fears and discovered the true limits of their character. The training grounds were filled with towering metal structures, narrow passages, tunnels, and empty chasms. Every corner held a challenge, every shadow a trial. Triss scanned her surroundings. Her heart raced, her hands trembled, but the fire of courage within her pushed her forward. The Fall Tower. The Fall Tower rose into the sky, a colossal metal structure with a dark abyss yawning beneath it. The wind roared in her ears, and the dizzying height made her knees shake. As Triss climbed, her own thoughts echoed in her mind. Do you belong here? Can you prove your courage, or will you fall? Her knees trembled, her heart pounded violently in her chest. Her hands clutched the rusted iron tight. She could feel the sweat in her palms and the strain in her arms. She paused for a moment, closed her eyes, and weighed her fear against her courage. Then she jumped. As she fell, the wind whipped against her face, and the roar in her ears grew louder. For a brief instant, time slowed. When she landed, pain and courage merged into one. That moment marked the birth of Triss as Dauntless, the training field. Another part of the training area was a battlefield of old factory rails and heaps of metal. Here, trainees were trained through deadly simulations. There were no weapons. Every strike was real, every pain absolute. Triss moved with Christina and Will. Each blow tested both their bodies and their mental endurance. Triss's agility and quick reflexes soon pushed her ahead of the others. Christina, sharp and resourceful, shielded Triss from attacks. Will balanced the group with morale and quick thinking. With each strike, Triss felt both pain and strength, constantly redefining her limits. Then her inner voice rose once again. Pain is temporary, fear is temporary, but I am growing stronger. My divergence will be my advantage. The mind labyrinth was the most critical test in dauntless training. It exposed a participant's deepest fears, guilt, and suppressed emotions, making them feel terrifyingly real. Triss's labyrinth was filled with guilt toward her family and uncertainty brought on by her divergence. As she moved through the dark corridors, she confronted memories from her childhood, moments in her abnegation home where she felt she had failed her family's ideals. The little Triss who silenced her courage to obey. The looming fear of her divergence being exposed. Each fear slowed her, made her hesitate. Yet with every step, she discovered her own strength, learning to face and control her fears. By the end of the labyrinth, she had confronted herself and turned her divergence into victory. 4 and the first encounter. One of the instructors, 4, had noticed Triss's divergence. His piercing eyes, silent composure, and mysterious aura set him apart. At first, Triss was wary of him. His demeanor was cold and distant. One day, 4 pulled her aside. You're different from the others, but that difference will either make you strong or destroy you. The choice is yours. In his words, Triss sensed both a warning and an opportunity. That brief conversation sparked the first flicker of trust between them. Her inner voice spoke once more. Maybe this is where I truly belong. where I'll discover my real strength. Chapter 3: Friendship and Trials. Expanded versions. Days passed swiftly in the dauntless compound. Every morning, under the gray sky and among the rusted towers and abandoned industrial zones, training would begin. Tris, Christina, and Will had quickly learned to trust one another. Christina organized the group's plans with her intelligence and strategic mind. Will eased the tension with his humor while remaining alert to potential threats. Tris, with her quick reflexes and the intuition born from her divergence, naturally began to lead the team. Physical and mental trials. The training tested not only the body, but also the mind. The dauntless instructors were masters at pushing the initiates to their limits through high-risk tasks. Night simulations. In the dark corridors of the compound, the trainees had to find one another and neutralize enemy targets. Tris constantly threw herself forward to protect her friends, using the heightened awareness her divergence granted to sense danger before it appeared. Strategy missions. Each mission required both speed and planning. With Christina's guidance, Tris and Will set traps for enemy pawns and stayed prepared for sudden attacks. Every mission tested Tris's courage and strategic intelligence. Her divergence sometimes put her friends in danger, but more often it saved them, granting unexpected advantages in unpredictable situations. Four's tests. Four had become the one who saw Tris's potential most clearly. With his piercing eyes and quiet demeanor, he constantly pushed her limits, deliberately assigning her to high-risk missions. One day, during a difficult task in the tunnels of an abandoned factory, Tris found herself completely alone. Enemy pawns attacked suddenly. Tris reacted with precision, using her quick reflexes and sharp decisions to subdue them and to stay alive. After the mission, Four approached her silently and whispered, "You're not normal, Tris. That's your greatest strength and your greatest curse." Tris's inner voice collided with his words. "My divergence, is it a curse? Or is it what makes me strong? Each step makes me feel both fear and freedom." Four's words helped Tris begin to accept her divergence. It was no longer just a label, it was both a force that allowed her to overcome danger and a symbol of her freedom. Night walks and inner dialogues. At night, when they quietly wandered through the camp beneath the shadows of metal towers far from the city, Tris, Christina, and Will often fell into deep thought. The wind howled through the rusted iron, and the dark tunnels seemed to whisper their hidden secrets. Tris could feel the turmoil within her. Being divergent, it makes me feel alone, but it also gives me strength. With every step, I'm crossing my own boundaries. Four was right. It's both a curse and a gift. Christina noticed her silence and approached softly. "Just trust yourself. We're with you, no matter what," Will shrugged, adding with a faint smile, "And don't worry, somehow, we always manage to save each other." That moment wasn't just about friendship for Tris, it was about trust, solidarity, and inner strength. The presence of her friends helped her manage the dangers her divergence brought, and every trial drew them closer together. Tris's inner strength and determination. Through the training, the missions, and the night walks, Tris began to truly understand her divergence. It was no longer a flaw or an anomaly, it was her greatest advantage. With every test, every blow, she grew stronger, both physically and mentally. I am divergent, but that doesn't destroy me. It frees me. It makes me stronger. I will no longer fear or stop. This determination within her allowed Tris to protect her friends and stand out in the dauntless trials. She had learned that her divergence could be both a threat and an advantage. Now she was ready to forge her own path. Chapter 4. Dauntless Training. The Labyrinth of Courage. Expanded version. The Fall Tower. In the early hours of the morning, the harsh roar of the wind broke through Tris's sleep. Beyond the massive iron gates of the dauntless compound stood a tower that seemed to defy the sky itself. Gray clouds coiled around its peak, moaning through the wind and spreading fear into the hearts of the trainees. Each student's fear of heights grew stronger as they stared at the towering structure. When Tris reached the base of the tower, her knees trembled. Looking down, she saw an abyssal emptiness. The wind whipped her jacket, amplifying her fear of the height. Christina stood beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. There was a wordless courage shining in her eyes. Tris took a deep breath, pressed her sweaty palms together, and closed her eyes. The instructors were calling names one by one. With each name, hearts beat faster. When Tris's name was called, she stepped forward slowly. The metal steps of the tower were cold and rusted. Each clang under her feet deepened the fear inside her. Four watched silently from above. His gaze carried both a warning and a silent approval. If fear stops you, you won't make it out alive. But if you embrace it, you'll gain strength. His words echoed in her mind. Tris closed her eyes for a moment and threw herself into the abyss. The chill of the air sliced across her face. The wind roared in her ears like a scream. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst from her chest. Her vision darkened, but within that moment, she felt an extraordinary sense of freedom. When she hit the ground, pain surged through her body, yet she realized that courage and freedom had blended into something indescribable. That moment marked the birth of Tris as Dauntless the Battlefield. After the Fall Tower, Tris and her friends were taken to the battlefield, a vast labyrinth filled with old train tracks, crumbling walls, and rusted metal pipes. The simulations here were deadly real. Even the smallest mistake could result in serious injury. Tris moved with Christina and Will. Suddenly, a strong trainee lunged at her. Blows clashed fast and hard, each one ringing with the sting of pain. Tris used her reflexes to block the first strike, countering swiftly to knock her opponent off balance. Every hit was both a physical and mental test. Tris's mind was completely focused. Strategy, speed, protecting her friends, all intertwined. Christina stood on the edge, signaling warnings with quick glances. Will anticipated threats, supporting the team's movements. As Tris dodged another strike, her thoughts rose from within. Pain is temporary, but this experience gives me strength. I'm here with my divergence, and it gives me an edge. Every step is a test, but I will not give up. Each move sharpened both her courage and her tactical intelligence. On the battlefield, it wasn't just physical strength being tested. It was also the power of decision-making and leadership. The Mind Labyrinth. Later that day, the trainees were taken to the Mind Labyrinth. This simulation was one of Dauntless's most grueling trials. The technology recreated each participant's deepest fears and suppressed emotions with vivid realism. Tris's labyrinth turned into a dark sandstorm. The grains whipped against her face, burning her eyes. The wind roared like screams, filling her ears. Every corner of the labyrinth was shaped by her guilt, fear, and repressed anger. Confrontation with her family, The guilt she felt for defying abnegation discipline. The anger she had buried deep inside. The consequence of her divergence. The fear of being inadequate, of unleashing chaos through her awareness. With each step, Triss's heart battled her mind, torn between fear and courage. Standing in the center of the storm, she took a deep breath and thought, being divergent isn't about denying fear. It's about accepting it and growing with it. This is my truth. When she reached the heart of the labyrinth, Triss experienced an awakening. Her divergence was not a curse meant to destroy her. It was a gift meant to make her stronger. Night and inner monologue. That night, Triss sat alone by the campfire. The stars glimmered faintly through the hazy sky. The wind howled through the metal structures of the camp. Her heart was still racing, her body exhausted, but her mind sharper than ever. She whispered to herself, "Who am I? My family? The system? Or am I truly myself?" Four approached quietly and sat beside her. His words were soft, yet carried weight. Every test, every fall, every fight, they're not just meant to test you, but to show you your true strength. Your divergence makes you dangerous, but it's also what will keep you alive. Triss lifted her eyes to the stars. Inside her, fear and an overwhelming power burned together. Her divergence was no longer just a label. It had become the force that would shape her life, her choice, and her future. Chapter 5, Betrayal and the True War. Expanded version. Erudites. Secret plans. As night silence wrapped around the dauntless compound, the sky was shrouded in a gray mist. The stars appeared only occasionally. The wind howled through the rusted metal pipes, creating a melody both haunting and foreboding. Triss moved quietly through the empty corridors of the camp, her instincts on constant alert. The erudite faction was preparing to manipulate Dauntless's power for their own gain. Their leader, Janine Matthews, was using her intellect and technological mastery to quietly dismantle the system from within. Her goal was clear: to turn the factions against one another, eliminate the divergence, and seize control of the city. As Triss and Four surveyed the training grounds, they noticed a few subtle but unsettling details. Sensors malfunctioning, simulation systems lagging, and several security cameras flickering out at random intervals. A disturbing realization took hold in Triss's mind. Every movement could be a trap. If I'm not careful, not only I, but my friends will be in danger. Her intuition was right. That very night, Erudite's plan surfaced silently. The camp's security systems were sabotaged. The mental labyrinths and simulation zones turned into deadly arenas. This was no longer training. It was survival. The battle begins. When darkness fell, the dauntless compound became a war zone. Explosions lit the night, alarms blared, and screams echoed through the steel corridors. Triss, Christina, and Will were forced to move as one unit. Every corner hid a potential threat. Every shadow concealed an enemy. Triss's heart pounded like a drum as she formulated a quick strategy. Coordinate with Four, break through enemy lines, and guide her friends to safety. Use simulations to her advantage. Turn the traps within the labyrinths against their enemies. Weaponize her divergence. Predict enemy algorithms and dodge attacks with unpredictable movements. Every move demanded both courage and intellect. Pain surged through Triss's body with each hit, but her mind sharpened. Her focus became absolute. She wasn't just fighting, she was adapting, surviving, and protecting those she cared about. Inner struggle. In the chaos of battle, Triss found herself isolated. Christina and Will had been separated, and enemies were closing in. Fear clawed at her chest, but she pushed forward, guided by the force that made her different. I am different. This power is mine. Fear cannot stop me. When a soldier lunged at her, Triss parried instinctively and countered with precision, disabling her opponent. Pain spread across her body, but her mind was clear. This was her divergence, manifesting not as rebellion, but as balance between instinct and intellect. From afar, Four watched her strategic mind, her courage, her quick decisions. He was both impressed and silently proud. In the midst of chaos, an unspoken connection bound them, understanding without words, trust without promises. Triss took a deep breath and listened to her inner voice. This power doesn't just make me different, it helps me survive. If I learn to control it, I can protect not only myself, but everyone I care about. Escape and regrouping. When the initial chaos subsided, Triss and her friends regrouped in a quiet corner of the compound. They were exhausted, bruised, and shaken. Sweat glistened on Triss's forehead. Her hands were marked with small cuts. Christina looked pale but determined, and Will's breathing was still heavy. Someone whispered, "We won, but this is only the beginning." Triss lifted her gaze to the starless sky. A realization struck her. The system wasn't just an external enemy. Every step, every decision was a test of her own inner fear and strength. Divergence was both a threat and the key to survival. Night and the new strategy. By the campfire, Triss sat in silence. The flames cast a red glow across her face, shadows danced around her, and the wind whistled through the iron structures. To defeat my enemies, strength alone isn't enough. I need intelligence, courage, and strategy. Every move must be precise. One mistake could cost not only my life, but those I love. Four quietly sat beside her, his eyes studying her face in the dim light. Your divergence makes you different, but remember, being different isn't enough. You must use it. Every decision, every reaction will shape what comes next. Triss tried to balance the darkness and strength within her. With each fall, she grew stronger. With every tactical choice, she sharpened both her mind and her courage. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was becoming a warrior, a leader. I'm not afraid anymore. This power is mine, and I will learn to use it. Her eyes burned with determination, glinting like a streak of light in the distant night sky. This was the night she fully accepted that divergence was not a curse. It was the force that would define her destiny. Inner struggle and leadership. Amid the battle, Triss felt the weight of leadership settle upon her shoulders. Every decision could mean life or death, for herself or for her friends. Divergence isn't just a label, it's my strength and my responsibility, she thought. As she broke through enemy lines, Triss inspired confidence in her allies, turning chaos into advantage through calculated moves. This was the moment she wasn't just fighting, she was leading. Victory and a new beginning. When the battle finally ended, the Divergent stood victorious. But their triumph wasn't merely physical, it was spiritual. They had reclaimed their freedom and their identity. Triss looked at her friends. Their faces reflected exhaustion, pride, and fierce determination. This is only the beginning. Now we can forge our own path, she said softly. The city lay shrouded in mist and darkness, but for the Divergents, a new dawn had begun. Born from chaos, they had become a force the system could never predict or control. Chapter 7. Infiltrating the heart of Erudite, the great conflict, preparation and planning. Before dawn, the Divergents gathered silently in the forest. The cold, damp air added a tense stillness to the atmosphere. Every step echoed through the crackling of dry leaves, making the pounding of each heart seem even louder. Triss stood at the front of the group. Exhaustion lingered in her eyes, but so did unwavering determination. The moonlight illuminated her face. In her gaze burned the fire of not just a warrior, but a leader. Today, we don't fight merely to survive. We fight for our freedom, Triss said, her voice steady, resolute. Four crouched on a large rock, tracing lines on a map spread across the ground. The Erudite headquarters was surrounded by towering skyscrapers and watchtowers, a technological labyrinth filled with traps. Security cameras monitored every corner, and alarm systems stood ready for any breach. Four pointed to the critical locations on the map with his finger. Diversion. Four would take the lead in splitting enemy lines and distracting the security units. Infiltration team, Triss and Christina, would stealthily enter through the main access and make their way to the control room. Support and traps. Will and the other Divergents would detect incoming enemies, trigger traps, and maintain cover for Triss and Christina. Unique skills. Each Divergent would use their individual abilities, electronic expertise, fast reflexes, tactical intelligence, and combat proficiency, both independently and collectively. Every move is a razor's edge between life and death. One mistake, and it's over, Four said grimly. Triss took a deep breath. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest, yet the courage rising within her began to drown out the fear. Infiltration and first encounter. The Divergents advanced silently toward the Erudite headquarters. Concrete walls and surveillance cameras seemed to follow their shadows like living threats. The air buzzed faintly with the electric hum of advanced security systems. "Everyone, to your positions," Triss whispered. "Silence will be our weapon tonight." Four stepped forward, his eyes sharp and focused, his breathing steady. Manipulating the camera's angles, he created short blind spots in the surveillance grid. Triss and Christina moved like shadows, their footsteps light on the cold metallic floor. Every faint sound could mean detection and death. Suddenly, enemy soldiers burst from around a corner. Will reacted instantly, taking them down with swift precision, while the others triggered the traps they had prepared earlier. Exploding lights, crashing metal arms, and sharp noises threw the enemy forces into confusion. Every move was a matter of life and death. Triss's heart pounded furiously, every breath filled with both fear and courage. Her eyes scanned the hall with rapid precision, predicting enemy movements before they happened. Reaching the control room, Triss and Christina reached the control room deep within the facility. The building's interior was cold, metallic, and bathed in neon light. Screens flickered on the walls, while security systems and holographic displays tracked every movement. Triss began using her Divergent abilities to decode the system's algorithms. Every key she pressed, every wire she touched, required deadly precision. Christina, quick and silent beside her, disabled critical cables and disrupted the system's logic, halting the alarm for a short time. "If we make one mistake, it's all over for us," Triss said, holding her breath. Christina nodded silently, her eyes full of focus and determination. The system slowly began to collapse. Alarm lights shifted from red to blue. Cameras flickered and went dark. The Divergents were finally taking control. The great battle. When they entered the central hall, the erudite leaders and their elite security forces were waiting. Bursts of light, screams, and the sound of clashing metal filled the air. Every corner was a trap. Every move carried the risk of death. Triss engaged enemies in close combat, every strike a test of both strategy and strength. Four maintained coordination, constantly shifting the team's positions. Christina and Will lured enemies into traps, supporting the group with sharp, precise attacks. The other Divergents used their individual abilities to shift the flow of the fight. Fast reflexes, electronic skills, strategic intelligence, and physical power guided their movements. The battlefield became a scene of chaos. Exploding holograms, heaps of twisted metal, bodies colliding, glass shattering, and debris flying through the air. Every strike and every motion tested not only their individual might, but their collective unity, inner struggle, and courage. In the middle of the chaos, Triss paused for a brief moment. Her eyes were filled with darkness, her heart pounding fast. The enemies were many, but her divergent intuition guided her like a light through the storm. Fear is only a force to be controlled. It cannot stop me sensing the enemy's next moves. Triss made a swift defense and neutralized them with agile precision. Four's movements aligned perfectly with hers. That short instant of unity was both a display of leadership and power. It was the Divergent's greatest weapon on the battlefield. Victory and a new beginning. When the battle finally ended, silence fell over the erudite headquarters. The Divergent stood wounded, yet unbroken. Triss looked around. In the eyes of her friends burned the same fire of determination and freedom. Today we didn't just survive, we claimed our freedom, Triss said, her voice sharp and resolute. Four stepped beside her, smiling faintly. But remember, this is only the beginning. We still have many battles to fight to change the world. The Divergent stood together amid the chaos of the city. No longer just survivors, but the foundation of a force that would shape the future. Each had learned to master their inner strength and fear, finally understanding what freedom truly meant. Chapter 8. The New Order, the City of Divergence and Political Intrigues, Extended Version. A first glance over the city. The first light of dawn slowly crept over the gray, misty sky of a city still weary from battle. Chicago's streets bore the scars of conflict. Toppled metal beams, shattered glass, and dust-covered sidewalks stood as silent witnesses to the chaos. The wind howled through the ruins of fallen towers, and in Triss's ears, the echoes of the last fight still lingered. Triss and the Divergents stood silently atop the city's tallest building. Below them stretched a view of ruin and rebirth intertwined, destruction on one side, potential on the other. Her eyes scanned the streets below, analyzing both chaos and opportunity, her mind constantly mapping out strategies. Now the real work begins, Triss said, her voice steady, yet faintly trembling. It's no longer just about survival, it's about protecting and rebuilding this city. Four unfolded an old, worn map beside her. Once, the city had been divided like a fortress under the control of factions. Now, it was a fragmented landscape of potential power zones. Remnants of Erudite's technology still flickered in places, Some energy stations had exploded, dauntless security checkpoints were abandoned, and candor and abnegation were still struggling to recover. As Four's eyes followed the map, Triss's mind raced with possibilities. Which district to secure first, which factions to ally with, and which areas posed the greatest threat. The Divergent's new strategy, Triss and Four, divided the Divergents into two main units, Defense and Order Unit, tasked with securing critical areas, protecting civilians, and preventing new conflicts. This team would primarily operate in the abnegation and amity zones, laying the foundation for the new order. Infiltration and Intelligence Unit, focused on locating Erudite's hidden centers, disabling remaining technology, and uncovering enemy plans. This group would move through the city's underground tunnels and abandoned industrial zones, facing constant danger with every step. Christina and Will acted as rapid response and tactical support, shifting flexibly between both teams when needed. Other Divergents formed smaller groups based on their unique skills, establishing secret paths, traps, and lookout points to maintain control of the city. Every move we make is critical for both the city's safety and our future, Four said without looking up from the map. Focus, strategy, and unity, those are our greatest weapons. Triss looked around and saw the same determination reflected in her comrades' faces. This was no longer just a team, it was a family, a strong, united core of Divergents bound by shared purpose. New alliances and political games, the Divergents began seeking support from the remaining factions. Amity, the peaceful. Despite the devastation of war, they remained calm and pacifist. They agreed to cooperate with the Divergents to prevent further conflict and protect civilians. Candor, the honest. Guided by their strict sense of justice and truth, the Candor leaders questioned the Divergents' motives. Some offered full support, while others secretly monitored and reported their actions. Loyal, dauntless soldiers. A few highly skilled, dauntless fighters, loyal to Triss and the idea of freedom, joined forces with the Divergents. Yet every alliance came with its own risks. In particular, several high-ranking Candor officials still doubted the Divergents' true intentions and power. Politics became a new kind of battlefield, one fought not with bullets, but with words, trust, and manipulation. Triss understood the weight of this new challenge. Power isn't won only in battle, it's also won at the table. Words, trust, and strategy. Those must be our weapons now. Reconstruction of the city. The Divergents began reclaiming the chaotic zones one by one. Energy and technology control. The power stations disabled by Erudite were repaired, and several systems were reprogrammed to sustain civilian life. Streetlights, water pumps, and hospital generators were brought back online, restoring a fragile sense of normalcy. Security and training. The abandoned Dauntless facilities were transformed into Divergent training grounds and a central defense hub for the city. With new strategic plans in place, potential threats were detected early, and attacks could be prevented before they began. Civil participation. The people of Abnegation and Amity took active roles in reconstruction. After the conflicts, civilians began rebuilding their own neighborhoods, reclaiming both safety and community. Triss stood still for a moment, gazing over the city around her. Every building and every street told a story of war, but in each corner, a new spark of hope flickered. The people were no longer controlled. They were fighting for their own freedom, acting of their own will. Inner monologue and the test of leadership. As the sun set, Triss and four climbed to the roof of the city's tallest building. The lights below shimmered like a chaotic but living painting. This is only the beginning, but every step we take is a lesson, every choice a battle, Triss whispered, her voice tired yet resolute. Four stepped closer, his gaze filled with both pride and warning. You're ready to lead, Triss. But leadership isn't just about courage. It requires strategy, patience, and foresight. Your divergence may be your greatest strength, but it's also your greatest responsibility. Triss nodded, her eyes heavy with fatigue, but burning with determination. Within her, fear and extraordinary power coexisted. Divergence was no longer just a label. It had become the force that would shape the city's destiny. New threats and awareness. The city was not yet truly safe. Erudite loyalists, dauntless spies, and remnants of the old system still lingered in the shadows. Each new day brought fresh dangers, both internal and external. Triss looked at her friends. In each of their eyes burned the same fire of resolve and freedom. This group was now a family, an army, and a symbol. The Divergence, the key to the city's future. Every day is a test, but now we fight not just to survive, but to protect this city and its people, Triss said, her voice carrying the calm yet sharp tone of a true leader. Chapter 9. External Threat and the Defense of the City. The Divergent's Great Preparation Warning and the rise of a new threat. Chicago's misty morning trembled once again. The city, still weary from war, was now shaken by a new danger. On the horizon, massive dark silhouettes appeared. Sky-shrouding aircraft hovered silently, mechanical and deathly, watching the city below. Each one bore unknown symbols and advanced energy weapons. This was not merely a threat. It was the Divergent's new trial, a kind of final test. Triss stood atop the city's highest observation tower. Behind her were four and the other Divergents. Silence filled the air. In their eyes, fear and determination intertwined. Triss's heart pounded rapidly beneath the shadow of the machines. This isn't just erudite. Now we're facing an enemy from outside, Triss said, her voice firm and steady, though beneath it trembled a subtle unease. Four unfolded the strategic map. The city's old structure, defense zones, and Divergent-controlled areas were all clearly marked. They may have superior technology, he said, his tone sharp, heavy with awareness of the threat. But we know every stone, every tunnel of this city. That's our greatest advantage, citywide alarm and preparation. The Divergents immediately put the city's defense protocol into action. Every street, every rooftop had to become a watch point. Dauntless soldiers were stationed on rooftops, watchtowers, and major intersections. Each sentry tracked enemy movements in real time. Christina and Will organized the frontline rapid assault and trap units. Narrow corridors, explosive traps, and silent takedown zones were prepared to confuse and weaken the enemy. The infiltration and intelligence team deployed EMP devices aimed at enemy aircraft, coordinating to disrupt their electronic systems. Civilian participation. The Abnegation and Amity citizens were moved into safe shelters while maintaining energy, water, and communication systems across the city. Triss calculated every move in her mind, simulating enemy maneuvers and securing her allies' safety. Every step was a strategy, every breath a calculation. Every second is a choice, every choice means a life. she murmured to herself. The hidden tunnels and the setting of traps beneath the city lay abandoned metro and industrial tunnels, the Divergent's greatest advantage. Narrow corridors, dark labyrinths, and metal debris created perfect grounds for ambushes. Mechanical traps and silent weapons were installed to neutralize enemies without noise. Sound and light sensors tracked enemy movements, instantly alerting Divergent units. Secret escape routes and safe zones were chosen strategically for emergency evacuation and tactical retreats. They may come with technology, but we know this city like the veins of our own body, Four said, his eyes sharp as he scanned the tunnel layouts. Triss moved silently, marking every corner and passage in her mind. She predicted where the enemy would enter and which traps they'd trigger. Every move a pre-calculated counterstrike in her mental simulation. The Divergent's motivation and inner dialogue. Each Divergent prepared for the coming threat while fighting their own inner battles. Triss, every decision, every step affects not only me but the lives of my friends, but I can use this strength. Fear won't stop me. 4. Leadership isn't just about fighting, it's about inspiring, strategizing, and preserving courage. If we can't guide them, everything will be lost. Christina, strength and speed aren't enough. If we don't use our minds, we lose. Every trap, every move will save a life, Will. Every trap, every strike, that's our edge. They may attack first, but we'll control the flow of this war. These moments carried the weight of silence before a storm, filled with tension, fear, and unyielding resolve. The enemy enters the city. The first clash on the horizon, the enemy aircraft began to descend. Mechanical carriers and soldiers moved toward the city. Civilians were escorted to safety while the Divergents took their critical positions. Triss and Four analyzed the enemy's central assault line, identifying strategic defense points. Christina and Will drew the enemy into narrow passages, guiding them toward preset traps. The infiltration and intelligence team launched an electronic warfare attack to disable the enemy's command vehicles. The city erupted into chaos. Flashing lights, screams, clashing metal, smoke, and fire consumed the skyline. Chicago once again became a battlefield. Triss's leadership and the power of Divergence. Triss advanced carefully, protecting both herself and her allies with every step. Thanks to her Divergence, she could anticipate enemy maneuvers and respond strategically. Fear isn't just an emotion. I can use it. I can mislead the enemy and protect my friends, Triss murmured. Four moved alongside her, maintaining coordination and influencing the battle with his strategic decisions. The combined efforts of Triss and Four were the Divergent's greatest advantage in defending the city. Political and strategic conflict amid the great battle. As the enemy pushed into the city, the Divergents responded not only with physical force, but also with political and strategic intelligence. Candor members identified hidden erudite spies among the enemy and provided critical intelligence to the Divergents. Amity's peaceful districts were defended by Divergents to protect civilians from enemy attacks. Loyal, dauntless soldiers resisted at critical points while guiding the enemy into traps. The city was no longer just a battlefield. It had become a fortress reshaped by the Divergent's courage, intelligence, and strategy. Chapter 10. The Climax, Leadership, Destiny, and the City's Future. Detailed version. The Height of Chaos, Skies and Streets. The city's skyline glowed red from the enemy aircraft's lights, while flames from exploding energy bombs turned night into day. Streets trembled, rooftops threatened to collapse, and the wind carried the heat and smoke of the detonations. Triss stood at the edge of a rooftop, cracked concrete and shattered glass under her feet. Each step sent a shudder through her exhausted body. Behind her, 4, Christina and Will, waited, their eyes reflecting both fatigue and sharp determination. Triss scanned every corner of the city, enemy units advancing through narrow streets, patrols in the skies, sparking electrical lines, and rising flames. Every detail was a threat, every light a potential danger. "This is the most critical moment of our trial," Triss said, her voice both firm and resolute. "Every move we make will not only affect us, it will determine the fate of this city." 4 quickly checked the map, marking enemy movements while planning safe routes for the divergence. "We need to make fast decisions. One mistake, and we could lose the entire city." Tactical maneuvers. Every move saves lives. With her divergence giving her intuition, Triss anticipated enemy moves before they arrived. Every breath, glance, and hand movement was a strategic calculation. Christina and Will drew enemy units into narrow streets, triggering mechanical traps and EMP blasts that stunned and disoriented the attackers. 4 targeted enemy aircraft from the rooftops, cutting off their firing lines and ensuring safe passage for the divergence. Triss monitored the control center screens, managing traps and defense lines in real time. Red alerts flashed as enemy movements were displayed, demanding split-second decisions. Suddenly, a heavily armored enemy unit advanced through the main square. Triss paused, steadying her heart and breath. "This is our red line. We cannot let them pass." A rapid chain of commands followed. Will and Christina lured the enemy into a narrow alley. 4 redirected the aircraft, and traps were activated. Explosions erupted, metal and flames scattered. The armored advance halted, and the divergence seized strategic control. Inner struggle, leadership, and mastery of fear. In the midst of battle, Triss paused briefly. Her heart raced, her breath quickened. Her friends were injured, but their eyes trusted her. Every life depended on her decisions. "I am different, but I must use this difference to lead," she whispered to herself. With her divergence and rapid decision-making, enemy units moving through narrow streets encountered traps she had foreseen. Every move tested her physically and mentally, each one a strategy to protect her friends. 4 approached silently, nodding and gently touching Triss's shoulder. "You are no longer just a fighter, you've become a leader." But leadership isn't always won on the battlefield. Sometimes it's won at the table, sometimes in minds. Climax of the battle, control and coordination. The city center had become a complete war zone. Exploding energy weapons, collapsing buildings, and rising smoke plunged every corner into chaos. The divergence moved toward the enemy command hub. Triss and Christina infiltrated the enemy control room, disabling the main power systems. Alarm lights switched from red to blue, and enemy sensors became useless. 4 and Will pushed back enemy units, securing safe passage for the divergence. Other divergents cut enemy logistical lines, controlling the entire front with traps and explosive countermeasures. This moment marked the peak of Triss's leadership and divergence power. Every move tested her physically and mentally, saving her friends' lives and shaping the city's destiny. Victory and a new beginning. Silent heroes. When the enemy's main force was scattered, the city fell silent. As the fires and smoke slowly dissipated, the Divergent stood wounded but unbroken. Triss looked around. In the eyes of her friends shone determination, freedom, and a new hope. Today we didn't just survive. Today we won the future of the city, Triss said, her voice tired yet sharp. Four quietly approached, offering a faint smile. But remember, this is only the beginning. We will have to fight more to change the world. The city was now under the Divergent's control. The external threat had been repelled, and a new order was being established. Each Divergent had become both a warrior and a leader. Triss stood atop a high rooftop, surveying the city. Every day is a test, but now we fight not just to survive, but to protect the city and its people. The burning lights on the horizon symbolized both chaos and rebirth. In Triss's eyes, there was both exhaustion and a renewed determination. The power of Divergence now safeguarded not only herself, but the entire city. Chapter 11, Reconstruction and the Political Labyrinth. The Divergence City, the city's rebirth. The battle was over, but the city was still in ruins. Collapsed buildings, fallen poles, and shattered glass created a landscape that the Divergents and civilians had to clear. Triss, Four, Christina, and Will stood in the city center early in the morning. Each took a deep breath, their eyes scanning every corner. Energy stations and power lines, Erudite's technological control points had been damaged. The infiltration and intelligence team quickly intervened, restoring systems and securing energy flow. Security and defense. Dauntless zones had become the Divergence training and security centers. Explosive traps were removed and replaced with sensors and monitoring systems to ensure city safety. Civil participation. Residents of Abnegation and Amity cleared damaged areas, opened roads, and restored basic services. Everyone realized the importance of working with the Divergents. Freedom was won not only through battle, but through collaboration. Triss paused in front of a ruined building, placing her hands on her stomach, closing her eyes, and taking a deep breath. We won the war, but rebuilding the city may be as hard as fighting it. Four silently approached and unfolded a map. Each neighborhood presents a different challenge. Energy, security, logistics. We need a separate plan for each. Divergence exists not just to fight, but to organize and lead as well. The new political order, alliances and tensions. The Divergents were no longer focused solely on physical reconstruction. The city had become a place where different factions came together, a political labyrinth. Amity, the peaceful and open to cooperation with the Divergents. They provided support in agriculture and energy, making the rebuilding of civil life easier. Candor, the honest. Guided by their sense of truth and justice, they supplied the Divergents with information to expose Erudite's old plans. However, some of their leaders still didn't trust the Divergents. They held secret meetings and discussed possible betrayal scenarios. The loyal Dauntless, those who had fought beside them, formed an alliance with the Divergents and were now securing key points throughout the city. Triss was trying to make sense of these political balances. Every move affected both the city's stability and the Divergent's reputation. Power isn't won only on the battlefield, it's won at the table too. Words, trust, and strategy, all of them are our weapons. The Divergent's task distribution. Triss and Four divided the Divergents into groups. Protection and Order Team, maintained security in critical areas of the city, and prevented potential conflicts. Infiltration and intelligence team tracked down remnants and spies of erudite, disabling their technological devices. Reconstruction team worked alongside civilians to rebuild the destroyed infrastructure and provide basic necessities. Christina and Will coordinated both rapid response and communication. 4 managed strategic planning across the city, ensuring the Divergents carried out defense and reconstruction efforts simultaneously. Inner reflection and the test of leadership. As night fell, Triss stood on a rooftop. Below her, the city lights flickered, every street telling a different story. Every choice is a test, every step a responsibility. Fighting isn't enough. I must guide, lead, and earn people's trust. 4 came up beside her, resting his hand on her shoulder. You're not just a fighter anymore, Triss. You're a leader now. But remember, leadership isn't only about courage, it's about patience, foresight, and strategy. Your divergence is both your greatest strength and your greatest burden. Triss closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and looked toward the horizon. The city was still wounded, but it was free. The Divergents had become not just warriors of the past, but guardians of the future, new threats and preparation. Though peace seemed to have returned, Triss knew the threats had not vanished completely. Loyal erudite agents were still active in hiding. Some former dauntless leaders resented the growing influence of the Divergents. The remnants of the old system could still cause unexpected problems in the city's technological network. The Divergents looked at one another, the same fire of determination and freedom burning in their eyes. They were no longer just a group of fighters, but the guardians and symbols of the city's new order. Every day is a test, but now we fight not just to survive, we fight to protect the city and its people, Triss said, her voice calm yet resonant, with the tone of a true leader. Chapter 12. Internal Threat and the First Major Crisis. The Divergence Trial in the City. Mysterious Sabotage and the First Alarm. The city's silence is broken. In the early hours of the morning, the city was still misty and silent. Triss felt a deep chill as she stared at the massive screens in the control center. The alarms had begun to sound softly. Broken power lines, suddenly offline security cameras, and disabled sensors were flashing red across the monitors. This isn't external. Someone from the inside, a saboteur, Triss whispered, her voice cold but steady. 4 approached, his face set and his eyes sharp. We'll split the teams immediately. One group will secure the energy and infrastructure systems. The other will handle security and infiltration. This internal threat is testing us, but we're Divergents. Our advantage is our instinct and speed. Triss's heart was pounding. This internal crisis was unlike the outside attacks they had faced before. Betrayal from within was both a physical and psychological trial, the hardest kind to endure. The Divergent's rapid response, every second count security team, deployed throughout the streets and critical zones. Explosive traps and sensors were recalibrated. Patrols in narrow passages were tightened to prevent any enemy infiltration. Infrastructure and reconstruction team coordinated swiftly across energy stations and the water network. Thanks to Triss's concise commands, the malfunctions were repaired and key areas of the city were secured once again. Intelligence and infiltration team scanned every building, former control point, and abandoned laboratory in search of internal saboteurs. Using holographic maps, data analysis, and silent surveillance tools, they began identifying the locations of the infiltrators. Christina and Will moved through narrow corridors with silent but deadly precision, luring enemy units into traps. Their every move not only neutralized the threat, but also maintained the Divergent's coordination across the operation. Exploding sensors, flashing lights, and wailing alarms intensified the chaotic atmosphere of the city, yet even amid the chaos, the Divergents managed to forge a sense of controlled order. Triss's inner struggle, leadership, and intuition. Standing before the giant screens in the control room, Triss's mind raced through calculations in seconds. Which move creates the greatest impact with the least risk? Which team is strongest at which point? Four stepped closer, speaking quietly. Threats from within are far more cunning and dangerous than those from the outside. But we're Divergents. With our intuition and intellect, we can turn that into an advantage. Triss found herself in an intense mental battle. She had to balance her fear, the safety of her friends, and the future of the city on a razor's edge. My divergence isn't just my strength in battle, it's what will make the difference in a crisis. But every decision I make carries weight. One wrong move could endanger not just me, but the entire city. The first major clash, capturing the saboteurs. The group responsible for the internal sabotage consisted of former Dauntless soldiers and hidden erudite agents. Their goal was to disable the city's energy and security systems and disrupt the Divergent's coordination. The Divergents moved swiftly and strategically. Christina and Will lured the enemy into traps set within narrow corridors, taking them down with silent but precise strikes. Four controlled the strategic points, limiting enemy movement and constantly reorganizing the city's defenses. Triss issued tactical commands while also fighting directly on the front lines. Her divergent intuition allowed her to anticipate enemy attacks before they happened. Exploding sensors, flashing lights, screams, and blaring alarms filled the city, creating an unending wave of chaos. Yet the Divergents managed to turn that chaos into a strategic advantage. The source of the sabotage and the confrontation. Tress and Four conducted an analysis to uncover the origin of the sabotage. To their shock, it was revealed to be the plan of a former Dauntless leader. His goal wasn't just to shut down the energy systems. He wanted to plunge the city back into chaos, Four said grimly. Triss gave her team sharp, decisive orders. The units repositioned, cornered the saboteurs, and neutralized them one by one. Every choice saves lives, or costs them, Triss thought to herself. Being divergent isn't just about strength, it's about responsibility. Emerging from the crisis, securing the city. When the sabotage was finally stopped, the city could breathe again. The Divergents had been tested both physically and strategically. This crisis had challenged their leadership, coordination, and the very essence of their divergence. Triss stood atop a high rooftop, her gaze sweeping over the city below. Every crisis makes us stronger. This city no longer fights just to survive. It fights to shape its future. And we, the Divergents, have accepted that duty. Four came up beside her and nodded quietly. Threats from within are more dangerous than enemies from the outside. But you, Triss, have become the kind of leader who can face both. Triss took a deep breath. The city was still scarred, but now it was safe. The Divergents were no longer just a group of warriors. They had become the city's protectors, its leaders, and its hope. Chapter 13. The first light of dawn slowly rose over the city. Collapsed buildings, toppled signs, and debris from explosions still covered the streets. But this time, something was different. The city was quietly breathing, preparing to be reborn. Triss stood on a high rooftop, scanning every corner of the city alongside Four, Christina, and Will. Every movement, every street, every building formed a strategic pattern in her mind as her sharp eyes studied every detail that lay before her. Today, we're not just surviving, we're rebuilding the future of this city, Triss said, her voice firm yet filled with hope. Under the leadership of Triss and Four, the Divergents had reorganized completely. The security and defense teams were inspecting former Dauntless territories, streets, and critical zones. Explosive traps and outdated sensors were dismantled and replaced with advanced Divergent detection systems. New soldiers and civilians were being trained under their guidance, prepared to defend the city at any moment. The infrastructure and reconstruction teams repaired damaged roads, bridges, and power lines, optimizing the water and energy systems to make the city both safe and sustainable. Civilians, under the direction of the Divergents, actively joined the restoration work, contributing to the city's rebirth. The intelligence and infiltration units continued to locate hidden erudite agents still lurking in the city, neutralizing possible acts of sabotage before they could occur. Meanwhile, the civil cooperation and training teams educated citizens from abnegation and amity, preparing them to protect both themselves and the collective order of the city. The Divergent's mission was not only to ensure physical safety, but also to maintain political and social balance. Amity cooperated in agricultural and energy systems, helping to preserve peaceful zones alongside the Divergents. Candor supported them through transparency and justice, though some of their leaders remained skeptical. Triss worked tirelessly to earn their trust through strategic negotiations, ensuring that every decision preserved both the city's order and the Divergent's prestige. The loyal factions of Dauntless had accepted Divergent leadership. However, some former leaders held secret meetings, quietly plotting potential uprisings. The Divergents were not just securing the present, they were preparing for the future. The old Dauntless compounds were transformed into training centers for combat and strategy. Civilians underwent drills for defense and crisis scenarios. Triss and Four formed small rapid response units, running simulations to prepare for any threat that might emerge. As Triss looked out over the city, her inner voice whispered, "Every day is a test. Now we fight not just to survive, but to protect the city and its people." Being Divergent isn't just about strength, it's about responsibility. To lead means more than fighting. It means standing firm in peace, in politics, and in the trust of the people. Throughout the day, the Divergents inspected every part of the city, solving problems with precise coordination. The energy systems were fully restored, the water networks clean and secure. Security patrols were visible and effective in every district. Civilians moved freely through the reorganized streets, their trust in the city's new leadership growing stronger. Triss and Four stood at the heart of the city, observing the new order taking shape. Triss spoke with determination, though her voice carried a hint of exhaustion. This city is no longer just surviving. It's ready to live and to build its future. 4 nodded silently, adding, "The Divergents are no longer just warriors. They're the city's protectors, its leaders. Every decision, every action from now on will shape what this city becomes." Triss's eyes glimmered, a reflection of both fatigue and renewed hope. The Divergents had taken the city's destiny into their hands. They were no longer fighting for survival. They had become the guardians of the future, the architects of a lasting order.